Welcome back, my copy poppers and word nerds. Today is going to be kind of like a part 2 to our most recent episode with April Cox, episode 223, which is all about children's book creation. So with April, we got into the nitty-gritty about writing, editing, illustrating, publishing, and marketing a children's book. And now I officially have published my first children's book. And so I wanted to share a bit about the origins with you and bring on a special guest who has joined me for the ride as a partner to bring a lot of sales and marketing and business development experience from his very incredible background. So I think this episode will be really interesting for you in terms of writing and publishing a children's book, but also business in general, and a great introduction to NFTs and the Web3 world if you've been interested in that, despite everyone and their mom these days talking mostly about AI, which is also fascinating. And we've covered a bit of that on this podcast. And I plan to do more in the future on AI and how to use it to write better, faster, and easier. So before I share a bio of our guest, I want to just let you know that Duck Buddies, the secret clubhouse, is officially live on Amazon. You can find it in formats paperback, hardcover, Kindle, and audiobook. If you're watching the video version of this right now, I'm holding up the hardcover copy for you to see. It's got gorgeous illustrations, clever rhyming prose, a wholesome story, and even some really funny wordplay jokes that my adult readers will be cracking up at, but kids won't even get it. You can search for it on Amazon, or you can go to copythatpops.com/duckbuddies, and it will redirect you over to the Amazon product page. Thank you a million times over in advance if you grab a copy and leave a rating and review. That means so much to me for this podcast and for the book. It helps other people to want to give it a chance with that social proof, and it also helps with Amazon's algorithm. As you well know, if you're a published author yourself or thinking about publishing a book, whether it's nonfiction to build your brand or a children's book because maybe it's a bucket list project. I'll also direct you to duckbuddiesworld.com if you want to see more photos of our guest Raj and me with Gary V, the creator of the SupDucks project, upon which we base the main character's artwork, as you'll hear more in the conversation today. And if you want to learn a little bit more about NFTs and Web3 and what is all this crazy stuff that we're talking about. All right, so let me jump into a little bio about our guest. So on with us today is Raj Khater, or you can find him as pedactor.eth on Twitter and Discord and all the Web3 spots. So Raj spent 20 years in the banking industry, working his way up to a VP role at the Royal Bank of Canada before leaving to start RK Ventures. Always with an entrepreneurial spirit, Raj was able to balance his former full-time career while also starting multiple businesses, including in real estate development, consulting, e-commerce, and digital marketing. His prior experience also includes working at Hewlett-Packard in Germany, so that's a cool connection that we have, Deutschland, in HR, talent management, and Bosch, also in Germany, in HR international policy development. Raj also previously served on the board of directors for the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia, a $20 billion corporation, where he sat on committees including the Investment, Operations and Technology, Human Resources and Compensation, Governance, and Audit Committee. He holds a Bachelor's of Commerce and International Business from the University of Victoria, as well as studies in EU, Constitutional, and Trade Law at the University of Mannheim in Germany. You can learn even more about his business at rkventures.com. And we'll get to know him a bit more in this conversation today. All right, no more preamble. Let's dive into a conversation with Raj to talk all about Duck Buddies, children's book writing, NFTs, Web3, stand-up comedy, and more. Well, welcome, Raj, to the show.
Thanks, Laura. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And if anyone goes back to YouTube or the website to watch this, on the video version, we are rocking our Duck Buddy shirts today. Yeah.
Limited editions.
I know, right? One of ones for all those NFT nerds out there. So yeah, I really wanted to have you on the show today just to kind of have fun and talk about the origins of Duck Buddies, but then also to tie into people listening who maybe have thought about writing a children's book and would love to, or want to create characters maybe for a mascot or a brand person so they don't have to use their face. I don't know, lots of different angles that we could take this, but tell me your path to where you are today and Duck Buddies.
Yeah, so a little bit of a unique story. I mean, I've done a lot of things in my life, but my main career was that of a banker. I was a vice president at Canada's largest bank. And 20-year career, kind of worked my way up the corporate ladder, achieved the things I wanted to achieve, and had an amazing time and everything. But it did get to a point where I felt like there's a side of me, and I think a lot of people are going to probably share that story. Especially if you're watching this or listening to this with an interest of writing a book about how do I step out of my comfort zone, how do I share my story, and how do I achieve some of my bucket list items, which potentially could be writing a book. And what came across for me was, and where I met you as well, is through Gary Vaynerchuk's world, when he did his project in the NFT land of VeeFriends. That opened up my vision of what was coming down the road for blockchain technology, NFTs, et cetera. Because I was, one of those dudes who was always asking, what the hell is blockchain? I don't understand it. And I think a lot of us, associate blockchain with Bitcoin, and that's basically it. That's where it stops. And this kind of opened my world as to, oh my God, there's a lot more to this. Specific to this topic, it was around intellectual property rights of certain projects, etc. And that started to get my mind racing about what could be done with digital ownership, and getting into literary world, etc. is something I've always thought of as well. And I think as a lot of people share this story, right? Reading a kid's book, whether it's to our kids or just browsing through one and going, "Well, I could write that. I could do this," and then meeting you and knowing your background, etc., and then finding out that this is something that you've always wanted to accomplish and do as well. I think it was a perfect merger of the two of us, in the sense of bringing some intellectual property rights, bringing some of the characters that were kind of had a built-in fan base already, and then you doing such an amazing job with actually writing the book.
Thank you. Yeah, it's such a fun meeting of worlds. And really fast, as you say, copywriting and copyrights, I just want to shout out that I did an episode, gosh, back on 113 with Jason Tucker. He's the pirate hunter when it comes to protecting your copyrights in the Web 2 world. So I probably need to do another episode with him to say how are things changing with the Web 3 world. Aside from that, will you explain to folks who maybe are kind of still scratching their head, what is an NFT and what is blockchain?
Yeah, so great question. Blockchain, you really look at it as an overarching term. It's simply like a large ledger that's decentralized, not controlled by anyone, immutable, meaning it can't be manipulated. You can't fake the data. I mean, if transactions are happening on the blockchain, they're happening and they're public and you can see them. So just think of this, think of an old accounting world of a big ledger book, and it's got all your credits, your debits, your all that, transactions going back and forth, and it's all recorded. This is just digital, and it's not owned by anyone. It's open to the world. So that's the blockchain in general. Underneath the blockchain, there's a number of different facets. Obviously, everyone's very familiar with cryptocurrencies, etc. Right? So we won't get too much into that kind of stuff, but one of the most intriguing parts of the blockchain was NFT technology, which is non-fungible tokens. Fungible essentially being that really it's equatable, right? You used a great example once was, if I had a dollar and you had a dollar and we exchanged it, I mean, essentially it's still a dollar and there's no transfer of direct ownership. No one's going to care that, that $1 bill was different from this $1 bill. Whereas non-fungible tokens is the difference in the actual item, the asset, along with the transaction of movement, along with the ownership, whether from the original individual all the way through till history. Imagine knowing every single person that the Mona Lisa's hand passed through in time. From the Medici's family to onwards and etc. I don't even know if I'm using that reference right, but in any case, just knowing that would be historic. right? But then what it also opened up to my eyes was around ownership. Um, we've lived in a, up to now what we call Web 2.0 world, where um, Web 1 was essentially downloading information to ourselves, right? The conglomerates, the big companies, et cetera, would put out information, you would consume it. Web 2.0 was essentially us creating the content now. Think
Mm-hmm.
of Facebook, think of Twitter, aka X, Instagram, etc. We produce that content, right? But it's still distributed through the major players. They still really, at the end of the day, benefit the most from the work. Yes, there are examples like YouTube creators and TikTok now where you do get compensated somewhat for your work. What Web3 really does is transition that now into you as the creator, as the owner, to really have the largest benefit of that asset, whether it's your own personal creation, whether it is just a silly monkey JPEG, etc. Whatever it is, it's now, you know, you're getting the benefits. Think of you as a musician or an author in this case, in this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You putting yourself out there, grinding, doing the work, getting all your creativity out on a page, handing it to a traditional publishing house, only
Mm-hmm.
to potentially never see that book ever get out. If it does, the bulk of marketing and things, I assume it from an author standpoint, it's just like a musician, you're still out there doing most of the grind work.
Yeah.
And the benefit really largely is going to the publishing house,
Mm-hmm.
right? For in terms of the actual um, the money raise. I mean, not everyone's going to get a J.K. Rowling's type deal
Mm-hmm.
of ownership. So for the most of us, the publishing house is going to take creativity, right? It's going to take a lot of the money off the table. Whereas this now allows you to own it. And I think Duck Buddies was a prime example of that.
Yeah. And we didn't even, in publishing it in all transparency, we didn't even do the full Web3 published version that we could do. My vision is in the future, because I kind of want to just get one out. Like I wanted to do it all the way through. And I did self-publish it through Amazon, on the back end, paid for Illustrator, paid for different marketing help, paid for different things, all out of our own pockets. However, we could in the future launch a future book where we crowd fund it essentially and say, hey, everyone, we're making a Duck Buddies World NFT X or whatever, pickle, there's just X's on the brain, and say everyone who purchases this is going to be, you know, beneficiaries of of things that we build into the book. So basically, the sales that we make by selling the NFT digital tokens, we then know who helped us by purchasing those early ones, and we can reward them and try to add value to those tokens so that the tokens also go up in value, so that if they were to resell them, they could make money on that as an investment. Now, it's not clear with SEC rules and things in the US and other countries where we couldn't yet sell future profits of the book, but maybe that would be coming. So let's say in the future, if that were allowed, and our early backers, now they're incentivized to share the book with others, to promote the brand of Duck Buddies, to promote that book, because then they will also benefit by, maybe we have a royalty share. So there's so many things that we can do in the future if we really go full Web3 with it, to sort of crowdfund it and then add extra benefits and rewards and things.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think the community sharing aspect of what the blockchain can bring to the table, and we don't know where it's going to evolve to.
Right.
Eventually, it's the same as the early days of the internet, right? We weren't sure exactly what it was going to do. We knew that it was we called the super information highway back then, about being able to get access. A lot of people compared it to having an encyclopedia. Remember those Encyclopedia Britannicas these people used to have on their shelves at home?
Definitely.
That's essentially what we thought of it in the early days, is that this is an online encyclopedia. Things like e-commerce, and I mean, every single person has heard that story, right? Who's gonna buy a book off the internet? Who's gonna buy shoes from the internet? Like,
Who's
Here
going to
we
put their
are.
credit card into the internet?
You got it. And yet here we are, right? And
Mhm.
that's the same place we are with blockchain right now, because it's then, unfortunately, we're still in those early days where there's a lot of misinformation. There is unfortunately still some abuse of people's knowledge levels, etc. So, but I think to your point, once we get through that kind of painful period, we're going to see a flourishing of what the blockchain really is around sharing with your community, owning with your community.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, your customers and your community are the same people, right? It's. I think it's going to be such an amazing world once we actually get to it.
Yeah, it's all about aligning incentives too. So it's really
Yeah.
fascinating where it can go. Yeah. And I would say too, if someone's listening and you're like, I'm still overwhelmed, one, you're still early if you're even considering learning about this. And two, you don't have to jump all the way in, but read a bit more, click around a bit more, just get exposed to it because this is not going anywhere. Even though it's a crypto winter, as they say, where things are all down, NFT prices are down, our overpriced JPEG monkeys and cats and yetis and birds are all way down from what they were at the high. But there's so many interesting things where this can go in the future. So don't bury your head in the sand and ignore it, but jump in to at least learn a bit more. So to bring people back to the origins of this book specifically, just as a fun background. So I always read books to my son, who's now 4. And like you were saying earlier, as I read things, I'm like, I could do better than this, or that word should have been this word to make it rhyme better and things like that. And I just kind of got tired of hearing myself say that I was going to write a book, but I never actually did it. So last year I wrote it and sketched it out with really bad little sketches. And I had made a post on Facebook looking for an illustrator. And then you reached out to me and what did you say?
I said, "Hey, let's chat because I've got a pretty significant amount of holdings in terms of intellectual property for some of these NFT projects that are very well known, like the Bored Ape Yacht Club, SupDucks, Gutter Cats, Moonbirds, Super Yeti, etc. And I just felt like a kids book genre mixed with these characters is like just the perfect marriage. And just when I saw your post, my light bulb kind of went up, and we connected, and there we went.
And describe to people, what does that mean? You have IP rights to Board Ape Yacht Club and SupDucks. Like, describe that
Yeah, it's a
specifically.
great point. So Bored Ape Yacht Club and for instance, whatever the project is, not every project is going to be the same in terms of giving rights, etc. But for instance, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is probably the best known around the world, many of the celebrities during the absolute
Mhm.
peak of the ecosystem back a year or two ago, were owning these what we call the JPEG monkeys now.
Snoop
That were
Dogg, Paris Hilton, Jimmy
exactly.
Fallon. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Jimmy
And
Kimmel, both of them.
and so what the Board Ape Yacht Club, which is its own project, which is owned by like their parent company, which is called Yuga Labs. Um, they, as part of ownership of one of the 10,000 Board Ape Yacht Club NFTs, original ones, you have what is called intellectual property rights, meaning you have the right to utilize the likeness, the character, etc., for branding purposes, etc. For character development, for pretty much whatever you want under the sun, with a few no nos, obviously, that they don't want to be associated with. But essentially, they've given you the rights as since you purchased. Back in the day, you could you know, imagine buying an NFT of Superman back in the day, or
Mm.
Batman, or Catwoman, or whatever. Like, just imagine owning the ability to use that character for your product. Imagine you had a line of water bottles or something, and you were able to use the Superman logo licensed for you because you own the actual asset. That's what this was. What became. And so part of owning the NFT is I have the right, and again, not every NFT project can be the same, but I have the right to utilize the characters, the likeness of them, in kind of any most formatted ways to brand products, services, stories, whatever we wanted.
Yeah. And give some other examples of what you've seen other owners of Board Ape Yacht Club NFTs and and or SupDucks owners, what kind of things have they used their IP rights for?
Yeah, I used the water example because it came to my mind.
Mm.
There's uh, and do forgive me, the owners of these projects, like I forget their names, but I think there's a board water or something. I think it's called, which is really popular. There's a burger joint in California. I think it's LA, but it's called Board and Hungry.
Oh, that's a good
That has
one.
done very well, and again, they utilize assets. But that's you and me and everyday people. But I mean, you've got Snoop Dogg and Eminem that have created literal
Mm-hmm.
characters of themselves into their apes and have released music videos and songs now utilizing those apes. And
Seth
Snoop Dogg is
Green.
big on this. Like
Yeah.
he's used ape quite a bit to for his branding. Um,
And
so
like
there's a lot of ways to use
Seth
this.
Green made a cartoon. It
Seth
was like a
Green made a
live,
cartoon.
some are live people, and then some are the actual digital cartoons
Yep,
walking around, kind of interacting. There's a
yep.
sup sauce. So it's
There's a sub
SupDucks
sauce. Yep,
sauce, like a
yep.
spicy uh yeah, sauce. I don't know if it's a barbecue sauce or if it's like a
Yeah,
spicy sauce, maybe. I
yeah.
haven't bought it yet, but I need to. So yeah, it's endless possibilities depending on your brand. You can make it your mascot, work it into your logo, work it into content creation, especially with AI increasing.
Yes.
I can't wait until the AI is really good so that I can take our characters, Danny, Mallard, and Ducky Ducker are the main two ducks in our book, and make them walk and talk and be animated for fast and cheap with this new technology coming. And so instead
Yeah.
of my having to put my face out there and create content for something silly that I think of, I can have my characters do it.
Absolutely. And the fact that you're getting sort of a supportive community along with it.
Mm.
Imagine being an entrepreneur that's already coming along with a community of a few 100,000 people that are open and willing to help support your project from day one versus you having to convince people to even look at your brand. Like that's such a leg up in this world.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So, do we want to talk a bit about writing the book,
Yeah.
which I know I wrote it, so you might have to turn the tables and ask me a bit, but I
Yeah.
also want to point out that you have a background in stand-up comedy,
Sure.
and there were a couple of spots, kind of like the turn of the story where it had to resolve,
Yeah.
where you gave me really good feedback. Okay, let's, you always want to reduce the number of
Yeah.
words. Talk about that specifically. I don't remember the exact line, but you read something in my book and you're like, okay, you're using 7 words to convey it. We can get it down to 5.
So, in terms of actually the writing part of this project, that was kind of the interesting part for me too, because it's one thing to own intellectual property rights and to just slap it on a product, etc. But to actually go and create something that's engaging, etc., that's where your talent took over, obviously, in terms of building the storyline, the characters, etc. But even my own background of I wasn't sure if I shared this, but I used to be a stand-up comedian back in the day, a long time ago, and I actually did it to improve my own public speaking. So I'm one of those crazy people that likes to take the hardest route possible to accomplish something. But in doing so, I learned a lot about the creative art of writing and how to convey a message and how to do so. And one of the things that I learned really quick was scarcity of words, the ability to convey your message in the shortest words possible, which in stand up is huge because you don't get to a punchline or a laugh quick. People are losing interest really, really fast. And when you were done your writing process, we were kind of going through some of the parts of it. I remember there's a few key moments in there where we could really help reduce the words of it. So like I know for your audience who might be thinking of like I don't know how to write a book or I don't think I I didn't write this book, but there's a lot of things you would probably bring from your life or your aspect or your perspective when writing that you could probably absolutely add into adding value. Like, I'd love to ask you in terms of your own thought process when you were writing this. Obviously, I know you've worked with authors and writing biographies, serious topics, etc. How do you then take that experience and bring it down into a children's book that has to be not only
Yeah.
engaging for the child, but for the person reading it.
Yeah. So I guess starting with the person reading it, the adults reading it, I personally decided not to dumb down the vocabulary. So even as I kind of just did a quick search on best tips for writing kids' books, a lot of the sites would say you have to know the exact age and you want to use like these words that they're learning in school because though you got to kind of bring it down to this sort of range of vocab. And for me, I don't want that when I'm reading my books for my own son. I would rather have teachable moments where he encounters new words he doesn't know and I get a chance to stop and explain it and then he learns new words. So I kind of don't subscribe to the this book has to fit the exact vocab for that exact age range. I just used whatever would be funny, would rhyme because I wrote it in rhyming, which is kind of difficult. So if you want an extra level of complexity, decide to make it rhyme with exact syllables. But yeah, so when it comes to kids, I thought one thing is you want to make a story that's relatable to maybe things that they're going through. So I decided to make the main character, Danny, be the new kid in a town, the new kid in school, because all of us can relate to that. Even if we've never been officially the new kid, like let's say you kind of grow up in one town and stay there, you're still all new every year, you know, with a new teacher, a new group of students, a new pairing. So you kind of always have, maybe you're starting basketball for the first time. Like when I was a kid, I did basketball. So it's always new environments. We can all relate to that. It's a human experience. And so I just decided I would write it as she was new, felt left out and weird and different. But then she meets another duck because I wanted to have two ducks. It's called Duck Buddies. So I wanted to have at least two ducks in there. And then that duck is kind of helps inspire her to try something new. And they decide to put on costumes to sneak into the secret clubhouse, which is the apes, and blend in with the cool kids. And then they get discovered. So you kind of need to have always a conflict or some tension point. So, spoiler alert, they get discovered that they are imposters and get out of our club. But then there's an opportunity for a resolution. And that's kind of where the funny part and the extra word pairing, that's where you really kind of looked and honed in, like, how can we clean this up to make it even punchier? And then I wanted a resolution where everyone does get along and there's a message of inclusivity and let's come together and we can all be friends. So you don't only have to be a duck. You don't always only have to be an ape. Everyone can be friends together. So kind of to relate that in a kind of a one sentence, I wanted it to start where the main characters were feeling negative, had a chance to come to some kind of tension point for the chance of resolution. And in this case, it was a bit of humor and playing on differences, pointing out differences, and then a resolution where things came together in a happy way. So that's kind of the arc that I went into thinking of it. And it just came out as I wrote it and tweaked it.
And that's the fascinating part. I think everyone gets in their head about, I don't know what I would write, or I don't know. Well, I think it just starts with, well, what's the message you're trying to send?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that's a lot of what I got right away. You had your overarching kind of like inclusivity,
Mm-hmm.
acceptance,
Diversity is
diversity,
good.
all that stuff kind of already in your head of like, this is the overarching theme, and that, how you deliver it, etc. Those are mechanics, and those are things that obviously working with a professional like yourselves, anyone and people can get that worked out. But I think knowing what it is, I remember once this book got released, I actually just had a conversation with one of the soccer parents that hang out with a lot. Actually, is they mentioned that their husband and their youngest child um, have always wanted to write a children's book together. And
Oh.
that conversation never would have happened, without having this opportunity. But right away, I just thought, man, like how many people have that story of they're like, yeah, they want to do this with them for themselves or with their child, etc. Have no clue where to start, etc. So I think that's where having that conversation with individuals like yourself, and thinking things through, because not, it doesn't have to be the goal of selling, 6 million copies. It
Right.
can just be
Mhm.
something you want to do with your child and say, we did this together.
I
I
love
think that
that.
people need to understand that. And then just realizing what it is that you want to share.
Yeah, that's what it really is for me ultimately. It's like it's a passion project. I wanted to do it. So even if I only sold it 10 copies to my close friends and family that will just do anything crazy thing that I'm up
Yeah.
to, then I was happy because I did it. And it's something that my son can always see and have and know that I did. And when he's a little bit older, we can create things together. And yeah, I think a really smart approach is if you're doing it on your own or even with a kid, is to say, okay, let's think about a time or a situation when we felt really bad. We felt embarrassed. We felt left out. We felt sad. We felt angry. Zoom into that experience. And what did you do to overcome that, to fix it, to transform from that, and build a story around that? Because everyone can identify with feeling one of those negative emotions.
Yeah.
And oftentimes in kids' books, we like to have a happy resolution. So if you can kind of zoom into that, you could then think about building characters and a story around that. It could be based on real people in your life, or it can be completely made up or kind of a mishmash of different people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially in the world we live in today through self-publishing and
Mm-hmm.
all the tools that we have at our disposal, even brainstorming now doesn't even have to be sitting in a room with a bunch of people. Brainstorming with Chat GPT is an amazing thing.
Yes.
I do it for all sorts of aspects in my life, and just when I have a thought, but I can't really flush it out or branch it out into the different angles, I will use Chat GPT to almost have a conversation with and
Mm-hmm.
just to get my brain going. So I think the goal of writing a book and sharing your story, whether it's children, whether it's biographies, whether it's your background in business or
Mm-hmm.
sales or whatever it is that you do, and you have a story to share or tell, I think, I don't think there's ever been a better time, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fun. Yeah, to build on Chat GPT, we've done episodes specifically on that in the past as well. But it was before I really had this book done in live. But there were a couple of spots where I wanted to refine things. And because I had everything rhyming, it limited some of the words that I could choose from. And so I would go to Chat GPT and I'd say, give me 10 words that rhyme with ape or
Yeah.
10 words that rhyme with duck.
Yeah.
And
I'm
just
sure that
to
was an
see.
interesting one.
Yeah, speaking of which, that reminds me, maybe we should have a quick little sidebar about that. So I personally use the curse words around my son. I'm a Gary V aligned person in that way. I don't call the F word a bad word. We call
Yeah.
it a curse word in our house because I don't believe it's bad. I just believe that you use it more appropriately in different contexts. In some
Right.
places, people are very offended and look down upon it, especially for kids to use it. So I tell him, you're allowed to use it, but if you're in a school situation and you're not allowed to use it in there, you will have consequences. And I'm going to back
Yeah.
up the teacher and whatever the rules are there.
Right.
Um, but I thought it would be really funny to embed some silly wordplay into this book that only adult readers would laugh at. For example, Ducky Ducker, his last name is Ducker for a reason, because I wanted them to interact with the mother and then for them to say, bye bye, Mother Ducker. I just thought
Yeah.
that was exceedingly hilarious. So, as a heads up to anyone out there, if you are very easily offended, skip this book. But it is wholesome and very appropriate read all the way through. But what were your thoughts when you first heard my silly wordplay?
Yeah, I mean your first reaction right away as an adult, obviously knowing the double entendre is that you're just like, oh my god, right? But then kind of as you go through the book, it kind of just it keeps it entertaining, but it just the story itself, the message itself, kind of just takes over. I know a number of individuals that have bought the book around me that have given me feedback of honestly, it's been nothing but positive in sense
Oh,
of like they laughed at the version. I don't want to give away every page, but there's
uh-huh.
even ones that are even I don't want to say not the word worse, but I mean more blatant, and they're funny, they're funny. But I said to someone, they said, asked me a question, wouldn't you be worried about kids, etc. saying this kind of stuff or asking questions on it. I just said, oh, I mean, that's on you and how you feel about like how you shared with how you handle curse words, etc. in your household. But I said more to me is if you're worried about it and your 3 to 6 year old kind of knows the meaning of some of those words, you probably have a bigger problem than than this book.
Or it's like they're hearing worse at school from peers
Exactly.
than in a book where you're in a very safe, comfortable environment sitting with your kid where you can explain things and have bigger
Yeah.
conversations if they do notice it and
Yeah.
pick up on it.
And I think people need to understand like this, that was the entire concept of the book, was that it needed to be engaging and fun for the reader and the listener.
Mm-hmm.
And to go back to how many times have we read a children's book and said
It sucked.
this sucked,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or it was like not.
It
I
was
can't even count how much money we've spent on books for kids, for my children, where I don't even think they just do it because it's the bedtime routine. I don't know if they liked it or not.
right. Or if they like it, but you're just bored to tears, you're like, please,
Yeah,
can we get a different one?
yeah, exactly, right. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, a brand can carry a book, but that doesn't mean the book itself is great.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Oh, I love it. So I would say people go check out duckbuddiesworld.com as sort of our central headquarters. You can read more about Raj's background and link outs to your company, RK Ventures, which is also rkventures.com, right?
Yes, yes,
I'm pronouncing that right. Right.
yes,
Correct.
you're right.
Nice. And you can get the book on Amazon. There's a link to find it from our website. And also, you can just search Duck Buddies. The Secret Clubhouse is the subtitle for this first book on Amazon. It's everywhere now. Uh, yeah. And you want to give a little sneak peek on what's coming next from the Duck Buddies world, Raj?
Yeah, so I mean, we're excited. This is just a handful of some of the characters that we have on hand and on deck, ready to go. We're excited to be in conversations with some of the other projects that we want to start working with and building around the IP. Specifically, we can mention a few names, I guess. We've got some Moonbirds, we've got some Super Yetis, which is my heartfelt favorite. We've got the Gutter Cats, etc. So we've got some exciting things on deck. And I think the nice thing is, as you see the evolution, it's you're going to see a mix, both for adults, for kids, for adolescents. I think there's just an opportunity to really bring some of this to life,
Mhm.
um, from the NFT world, and I'm just excited. I think it's going to be an amazing, amazing journey.
Yeah, it's so fun. And if everyone go back to the show notes for this episode, and we will also link out to these different projects so you can see what they look like and what the heck we're talking about. And also on duckbuddiesworld.com, we've got a side-by-side comparison of the original NFT pieces of art next to the derivatives that we used in the book because we wanted it to be more cute and accessible for kids. So it's not the identical one, but you can really see the inspiration of the different characteristics of the original art from those big projects to our art for our book. So it's kind of fun to go back and see it, which you can't see if you're only listening from audio. So head back to the show notes. We'll link out to all the things.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to do a round two on this very soon. But thank you so much for stopping by, Raj. This was fun.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate it.
See ya. Well, that was such a fun conversation with Raj. I'm really glad that he stopped by to talk with us. If you want to grab a copy of Duck Buddies, head over to copythatpops.com/Duck Buddies. You can also go to duckbuddiesworld.com to learn more about this first book and some future books that are in the works. If you've got any questions about writing, self publishing, books when it comes to nonfiction or children's books, please reach out and ping me with questions. I love to hear from listeners. And also come say hi to me on social media. I'm at Laptop Laura on all the socials. Hope you're having a great day. And remember, keep on finding ways to write copy that pops.